Welcome, everyone, to Redacted on this Friday. You are watching Redacted.
It's Thursday, darling.
Oh, it's Thursday?
It's our Friday because we don't do a show,
Okay.
but it's Thursday. Thank you for joining us. It's Thursday, the 1st of May. Clayton has developed a bit of the flu that went through our house.
No, I'm good.
That's what he gets for bragging.
I'm good. I feel virile. I'm
that
strong.
he did not get the flu, and he is getting the flu.
I feel good. I feel strong. I'm pushing through. I feel good. Hey,
So
welcome into the
says he.
show. Everyone, we got a very busy show for you on this Thursday, and I'm going to be here for the duration of it because I'm a man.
Thought you were gonna start
I'm not a
singing,
snowflake.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty.
Yeah, I am going to do this show, and you are going to love it. Hey, we got a lot of news to get to today. Mike Waltz. We thought maybe he was fired. It looks like he might have been reassigned, but it could be the same. Could be the same thing as being fired. He's being reassigned to the United Nations, maybe the worst job in Washington D.C. We'll see. And also, the Kremlin is praising President Trump for this minerals deal, basically saying that President Trump has now destroyed what's left of the Zelensky regime. So we're going to dive into all of that today on the show.
We're going to continue to talk about why the Biden administration did nothing to stop human trafficking, what the Trump administration is at least admitting to have happened, but what can they do? Also, the media is saying, I told you so. President Trump, he tanked the GDP. But when you look into those numbers, actually, there's some good stuff there. We're going to talk to Peter St. Onge about that. Also, there's a war of narratives about the COVID pandemic between China and the Trump administration. China is saying, look, Biden did it great. It was Trump that screwed up the pandemic. We're going to prove it to you. This is very strange. It's like, why does it matter? It's so strange that I think it matters more. So we're going to look at the war of words that's happening around the pandemic between the Trump administration and China.
China. It's pronounced China. And also, hey, today is a Rumble Premium Thursday where we hang out with our Rumble Premium subscribers. So the show is free right now. Of course, the show is always free. At the end of today's show, we're going to hang out with our Rumble Premium audience. So if you're a Rumble Premium subscriber, you can hang out with us. Free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down on this. We've always believed in empowering voices, no matter how unpopular. And now we're taking that fight to the next level when major advertisers conspired to pull their dollars. Even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turned their backs on shows like ours, claiming Rumble had a right-wing culture. But we're not here to fit a mold. We are here to defend free expression. Right now, for a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using the promo code REDACTED. Just visit rumble.com/premium/redacted and claim your discount code today. Just use that code REDACTED. And join us today. At the end, we're going to hang out. Just do a little hangout today after the show. It's always so funny at the end of the show when I see when we flip that button.
Yeah.
I see a bunch of people in the comments are like, wait a minute, Redacted is now a paid show. I'm like, no, because they joined us late. They're like, they clicked on it. And they're like, wait a minute, when do they become paid? No. The whole show is free. After today's show, you're going to hang out with us, Rumble Premium. So
You're going to do it. You're going to like it. There's good stuff there.
All right, let's talk about Mike Waltz, shall we? Let's talk about what the Trump administration is currently doing. And we saw that Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, was said to be leaving early this morning. We actually been hearing reports of this for a few weeks now. How is this all going to unfold? Is he out? Is he being fired because of the whole signal leak? Was that the issue that was going to be unfolding for him? That the signal issue was the reason he was going to be kicked out? Well, now we learned later this afternoon that, of course, he's not been fired. He's been reassigned. He's been pushed over to the United Nations. So now he will be over at the United Nations as a U.S. ambassador to the UN. Is that a worse job? Is that the worst job in Washington, D.C., given the fact that the United States and the Trump administration are openly hostile towards the United Nations? Let's bring in Colonel Douglas McGregor now to talk about that and all of what's unfolding right now with this minerals deal in Ukraine to talk about that. So, Colonel, good to see you. Is being reassigned to the United Nations the same thing as being fired?
Boy, that's an interesting one. Before we delve into that, Natalie, I'm glad to see you're back and hopefully recovered.
Yes,
and your
on the mend.
Too,
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a rough one. It's been a rough spring season.
We missed you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
Well,
she was in bed for like a week.
It's a good one, and I don't think any of us can say with absolute certainty, but I suspect that something had to be done to move Waltz out simply because of the signal chat. But at the same time, President Trump, and I've said this to a lot of people, this is not a mean-spirited person. He's always treated people, even those that he fires, rather considerately. I mean, he's been very considerate and pleasant. So, all I can say is moving him to the UN, I think, is a spot where normally we send people like Nikki Haley. It's not an influential position from our standpoint. And the only thing he's got to do is always stand up for Israel and essentially attack China and Russia and Iran. And that's his predisposition anyway, so he's ideally suited to the job.
Now, what do you think are the things, though, that were objectionable about Waltz? Because it seems to most of us that he was leading the charge to follow Israel into a war with Iran. And there are many people inside the Trump cabinet who seem to be resistant to that. So do you think that is the straw that broke the camel's back?
No, because I don't see many people in the cabinet who are opposed to going to war with Iran. I mean, who specifically has stood up and said, no, this is a bad idea? As far as I know, only Tulsi Gabbard. We've
and
heard
J.D.
nothing
Vance has
Well, J.D. Vance
of...
has said not that he's against it, but that we should be cautious and pause and reconsider, which is fine. And then Radcliffe, who's over at the CIA, has run silent, but he's a well-known advocate for attacking Iran and supporting whatever Mr. Netanyahu wants. So I don't know that there's that much resistance at all inside the cabinet. I just think someone had to take the fall for the signal chat. And given that Waltz had a connection to Goldberg, it was reasonable to move him out. Now, the problem is nothing has really changed, Natalie, and that's your basic point, because what we have now is essentially a group of people who behave like teenagers on TikTok. They just flip and flip and flip to one new thing after the other without much concern for any degree of policy coherence. And the one thing that's fundamentally missing right now is any degree of consistency or coherence to anything that President Trump is doing.
And so Chris Rossini posted this a short time ago. He said, Waltz is out. That's very good. Hegseth should be next. No more wars for Israel. Chris Rossini from the Ron Paul Institute, of course. It seemed, I don't know, is Hegseth insulated from this, or does he appear to be the other shoe that's about to drop here?
You know, it's difficult to tell, but I don't think he's about to leave. I think there is very little daylight in the thinking that goes on in President Trump's head and what goes on with Mr. Hegseth. I don't see any evidence that Hegseth is any less committed to the war against Iran, to building up for an insane attack on China over Taiwan, or obstructing Russia and Ukraine. I mean, there's just, I don't see any problem there as far as Hegseth and Trump are concerned.
Right. One of the things he said in the last 24 hours is, we see who's funding the Houthis. We continue to fight the Houthis. So Iran, you're on the list. It's basically this. We're watching you, but we have not declared war with Iran or Yemen. And so how can he continue to, rage this campaign without any formal declaration of who our enemies are here?
Well, we've been doing that certainly since the 1960s. We went into Vietnam without a declaration of war, and I haven't seen any evidence that we're about to declare war today against anyone. So the constitutional context is completely absent. I think what we have right now are a series of policies that are really not mutually enforcing. They seem to be entirely impulse driven by President Trump. You know, you take on the whole world for all intents and purposes with your tariff war. The rationale for your tariffs, the mathematics to support it, makes no sense. This is why the Japanese announced that, fine, they're going to sell their products to China and do business with the Chinese. They don't need to do business with us. And I think that's the tip of the iceberg right now. Again, Mr. Trump went into that thinking, well, I'm the big enchilada. No one can get along without us. He's about to find out that's not true. The Chinese and the Japanese are doing business in their own currency anyway. So you're accelerating with the tariff war, de-dollarization. Then you move to Russia, and you have this absurd agreement that's recently been signed with Ukraine about, well, it was supposed to be about rare earths. It's actually more about oil, natural gas, and aluminum. But it includes a clause that says that part of the reciprocity or Ukraine giving us first access to everything and anything is military assistance from us. Now, you've been dealing with the Russians for the last few weeks, and ostensibly, we seem to sign on for neutrality for Ukraine. Well, if we're going to treat Ukraine in the future as a neutral state, it can't receive any military aid from us, nor would we want it to, because it is our intervention in Ukraine, our buildup of Ukrainian forces, that's led to this terrible and pointless war. We essentially used Ukraine as a facade and a battering ram for our war with Russia. So then you move back to the Middle East, and you have these talks with Iran that ostensibly were supposed to come to some sort of arrangement that would avoid a war, and we have the Secretary of Defense threatening war against the Houthis and ostensibly Iran by extension. So, it's hard for people outside the United States to listen to what President Trump says, what his cabinet says, and the things that we're doing, and see any degree of coherence. In other words, we've become completely unpredictable. We act
one
like
of the things
a teenage criminal extorting his high school teacher.
Well, one of the things that I saw when I watched the announcement of the minerals deal is this is what Hillary Clinton wanted. This is exactly what the Democrats wanted. So we're going to pretend that it's some kind of victory for the Trump administration when the Biden administration was just pretending they didn't want it and doing it furtively. At the very least, President Trump is getting the minerals deal, getting the weapons deal, getting the money to rebuild Ukraine, the benefits of that investment. But again, it's what we held the Democrats accountable for doing in secret. At the very least, he's doing it in plain sight.
Well, you made a good point, Natalie, and I think it's an important one. Unfortunately, President Trump at this stage, I think, is desperate for something he can point to as a quote-unquote win. Remember, this is the man that said, I could end the war in 24 hours. This is the man that said, I can force the two to get together and make peace. He can't, and that was never true from the beginning. But there was no attempt to seriously study the issues at stake. And in the meantime, Natalie, you also have this man Kellogg on the sidelines continuing to blurt out things about Ukraine, our interests there, and Ukraine's interests and so forth that make no sense within the broader framework of normalization of relations with Russia. So I don't know that this agreement should be taken all that seriously. It has to be approved by the Rada. There are a number of things that can happen before that goes through. So I don't know how real it all is. So much of this seems to be marketing by the marketing genius, Donald Trump, don't you think?
Yeah, well, there's no one smarter with marketing than Donald Trump and knows how to use the airwaves and knows how to use television in this way. This signing of this minerals deal was put forth by the White House as like a big, as a big victory. But I want to get your take on the Russian side of this. So we had Medvedev who came out today and said Trump has broken the Zelensky regime with this minerals deal. They will have to pay for the U.S. aid with minerals resources, basically saying it's broken the back of Ukraine. Kind of, I think in many ways, praising Trump for this. But a lot of the move towards peace, the peace signals from Russia, there's a laundry list of things that Putin and Russia have said they want in order for there to be a peace agreement. And I don't know that we're even anywhere near half of them. Where do you see the Russian side of this? I mean, they hold all the cards. People, the United States doesn't hold the cards here, right? I mean, Russia holds all the cards in this situation.
No, listen, you're 100% right. I think President Trump knows that, but he's never going to say so publicly. And I also think that this agreement is very open to question. I don't see this as hard and fast and sitting in concrete. And what Medvedev was saying was not so much a compliment. He was pointing out that the Ukrainian regime was essentially committing itself to a life of servitude to Donald Trump and the United States, which doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing is we don't need to go there for rare earths. Rare earths are in many places, obviously in Canada, close by. We have rare earths. We just don't have a refinery, which we also need to build. But the bottom line is I'm just not attaching a great deal of significance to this. And I also think at some point privately, there'll be an argument made to the Russians, well, we're not serious about that military aid and assistance. We're just talking about perhaps some equipment or whatever. The problem is that the Russians are very professional people. They're going to look at all of the details. That's what Medvedev has begun doing. I'm certain that Foreign Minister Lavrov will have something to say about it. But the bottom line is the very specific tenets of any future agreement that ends this war, as you point out, are not being met. So quite frankly, the whole thing is irrelevant.
Colonel Douglas McGregor, great to see you as always. I guess, yeah, just give me your assessment here. Who's going to fill the role of Mike Waltz? I mean, we have Marco Rubio stepping in interim. The choice to replace him could be even worse than Mike Waltz. Like we're sort of celebrating, oh, neocon got pushed out over at the United Nations. Could be worse in a few days.
Conceivably, but we'll see. The last Secretary of State to double as the NSA at the same time was Henry Kissinger, and that was not permanently, but that was for a certain period of time. And admittedly, Kissinger, whatever you think of him, had the brains and the depth and the breadth of experience to do that. I have no idea who will be selected. But whoever it is, I doubt seriously it will be anyone that Mr. Netanyahu doesn't want.
Right. It does feel like
That's right.
It feels like Trump's trusted circle continues to get smaller and smaller. And those of us who are watching the administration and hoping for real peace plans in Gaza, in Ukraine, are just scratching our head like, when's this going to happen? Who's really on the side here? It feels like you can trust nobody.
Well, the sad part is that without some sort of normalization with Russia, we cannot expect much help or assistance from them elsewhere. And Russia has influence in Asia. Russia has influence in the Middle East and Africa. It would be good to normalize relations with them. That's much more important, to be blunt, than anything happening in Ukraine right now. I think the intelligent move from the very beginning for President Trump was to say, this is not my war. I didn't start it. I don't want it. And I'm ending all support for it. And I'm happy to host a peace negotiation when the various parties are interested. But we are out of this. And I'm withdrawing all U.S. military and civilian personnel from Ukraine. Had he done that, I think he would have instantly had goodwill from Moscow, which he needs, as well as from Beijing, because Beijing views the situation in Ukraine very, very much the same way as President Putin does. And that would be helpful to us in dealing with Iran. But there doesn't seem to be any coherent strategic framework where we understand that what we do in one region makes a difference to what happens in the other region. And if the goal is stability, prosperity, and peace, which I think is what it ought to be, we should have done something like that. But that's not what we're doing. We're actually ensuring that the war in Ukraine continues.
Right. That's incredibly true.
Yeah.
Privateer Productions in our chat says Redacted equals MSNBC now. Oh, because we're calling out the hypocrisy of these positions. We're MSNBC now. I love that. That's hilarious.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to see you. Okay, write me a dissertation and draw that parallel. I would love to know what we did to be MSNBC. Okay.
We are not sycophants around here, so we will praise President Trump when he does things that are good, and we will be critical when things like this happen.
Yeah.
So,
later in the show, we're going to talk about why President Trump has provoked this fight with China. And over the COVID pandemic, it seems like, we're not catching a lot of flies with honey, and I'm not exactly sure why we're doing it. So you're right. It's not really an isolationist type philosophy that we're enacting here. It's a provocation.
I really think, Natalie, that President Trump believes that bullying tactics work. I think he believes in his heart of hearts, and this may be because of his business experience in New York City. I mean, the real estate game in that place is pretty nasty. There's no question about it. But I think he believes that bullying others will deliver what he wants or what he thinks America wants. And I just don't see any evidence that inside the international system now, he's going to get very far that way. The world has changed. You know, somebody said, you know, we live in a multipolar world. No, we don't. We live in a world that existed before the Second World War. All the great nations, the civilizational states, China, Iran, Japan, everything is roaring back to health and power. We need to see ourselves as one of the neighbors, but not necessarily as the greatest superpower. We aren't. And that's the biggest single problem. I still think President Trump is surrounded by people who are telling him, boss, would you tell them? No, that's wrong.
Colonel Douglas McGregor, always great to see you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today and trying to digest these topics. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Colonel. Great to see you.
All right. Well, if you're coming here expecting us to like or not like somebody like Donald Trump and then report accordingly, you're in the wrong place. That is where you go for MSNBC. It's not a matter of how we feel about these world leaders. It's about the results that we want. We want peace in Ukraine. We want peace in Gaza. We want those things really badly. We want no new wars. We want President Trump to deliver on his promise to be known for the wars we win and the wars we avoid, which is what he said in his inauguration speech. So if you don't like that, I'm sorry. We don't like it either. We're not here to talk about things that we like.
No, in fact, next we're going to talk about the child trafficking. But here's something I'm thrilled from the Trump administration. See how we did that? Because RFK Jr. openly talking about HHS being involved in the child trafficking operation under the Biden administration into the United States. And it appears that both Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, or, you know, all three of them now, and RFK Jr. actively going after and trying to solve this missing children question. That's huge.
Also,
we didn't get any answers on that from the Biden administration at all. So huge praise from me on that question. We're going to speak with someone who knows all about it in a moment.
Also, we're going to take a look at the media narrative that President Trump tanked the GDP. The numbers don't actually seem to support that. So we're going to take a look at the numbers and actually study them rather than go with the headline. Before we do that, though, we want to tell you about our friends over at 1775 Coffee, because if you've ever had a cup of coffee that makes you feel younger, more alive, well, that's where you go for 1775's Rejuvenate Coffee. It's a bold dark roast infused with KAAKG. That's the same compound studied to reverse biological age by up to 8 years. You guys, it fuels your cells, sharpens your minds, and supports long-term strength, all without popping a cabinet full of supplements or drinking swamp water in a bottle. This isn't junk lab. It's not a mystery blend. It's just real single origin, small batch coffee that will make you go boy-oy-oing, which is what you buy coffee for, isn't it? Well, here's the best part. When you buy 1775 Coffee, you're backing free speech, freedom of choice, and a company that backs the same creative values that we do here on Redacted, so no corporate overlords. Just some products made for people who really believe in something real and want to add something to the economy. So go to 1775coffee.com, grab their anti-aging longevity roast, use the code Redacted, and you'll get 15% off. So feel sharper, stronger, younger, and know that you're fueling the companies that give a damn about your health and freedom. That's 1775coffee.com/redacted. Use the code Redacted.
I was going to bring some of it down here into the studio but I went to look for it in our shelf. We've already used it all.
Oh.
So I ordered more. But here's some of our other 1775
That's the
coffee.
last of it.
So yeah, but no, the longevity one, the anti-aging one, we have to get some more on order. All right. Well, one of the things I cannot get out of my head over the past 24 hours is RFK Jr. sitting in the White House admitting that his department, HHS, facilitated the trafficking of children into sex slavery. Watch.
We have ended HHS as the role as the vector, the principal vector in this country for child trafficking. And during the Biden administration, HHS became a collaborator in child trafficking and for sex and for slavery. And we have ended that, and we're very aggressively going out and trying to find these children, the 300,000 children that were lost by the Biden administration.
Unbelievable. Well, the media, of course, won't touch the story at all. They totally ignored it because it means that the Biden administration not only knew about it, they were facilitating it. Yes, the sale of the children. So they would, of course, have to acknowledge all of this. Natalie Denise is the founder at Counter Trafficking Alliance and has been watching all of this unfold. I think you've testified multiple times across multiple states on this issue. And Natalie, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. I'm just so upset because we've spoken to so many whistleblowers here on the show who spoke to members of Congress. They were members of HHS. They told members of Congress, they told the Biden administration, here's what I'm seeing happening, and they did absolutely nothing about it. What say you?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of intricate parts that are definitely corroded and broken within the system of HHS. And, I'm glad that this is actually surfacing to the public eye and that there actively is some visibility on some of these corrupt parts. Myself and my team at Counter Trafficking Alliance actually looked at the HHS specifically and their partnership with the National Human Trafficking Hotline. That's another part that I would hope that we're all going to focus on, because not only are they failing migrant children and migrants themselves, whether they're adult or children coming into the United States getting trafficked, but we also have an American problem here in the United States with our broken system, and especially with our tax dollars going towards a resource that we all think is helping victims of human trafficking.
But it was only Republicans who in Congress asked Alejandro Mayorkas or spoke to whistleblowers. Democrats seem completely uninterested in it. All they care to do for migrants is just set them up in a community and give them a social security number. They don't care that on the way there, they've been raped and robbed and extorted by the cartels. So why is this such a partisan issue? And now we have to wait until an independent like RFK Jr. says, yes, it's been happening. We're going to try and find them. Why did they have to get to this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would understand that if they are actually going through a very intricate investigation, they actually have to trace and reverse engineer who exactly facilitated the trafficking or what lax policies were allowed and by who. For example, Catherine Chan was actually one of the appointed resources by Alejandro Mayorkas, and she actually was the head of Polaris Project. So it's things like this where there are little movements that we don't particularly see out in the open or in the public that we actually have to do a deep dive on. And from there, I would expect to find or see some sort of report that points out the intricacies of how they facilitated the trafficking, because how do we get to the root cause if we're just acting rashly? I do understand that there is an immediate want by the public to rescue these children, and that absolutely, I am happy to hear RFK say that they are actively trying to find these children and recover them. But I'm also for the root cause analysis on what exactly caused the trafficking and who facilitated this within the HHS administration.
Right.
Where are these children? This is the question. It's like we're going to find 349,000 children just like sitting in a former Walmart facility in Texas, and they're all there. They're just sitting there waiting for Superman to arrive and swoop them up. President Trump alluded to the fact he thought that these children were dead.
Unfortunately, because, if we truly look at it at a bird's eye view, these children came in without identification. They came in without any tracking systems of any sort. In fact, with my own personal eyes, I witnessed children come over the border with papers in hand in their pockets, already knowing which sponsors they were going to. So, I'm hoping, again, just referring back to my first answer, I'm hoping that they do such an investigation that they even find which NGOs or organizations facilitated this. But to answer your question, even the HHS, the entire process of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, post-service release, and even the criteria of sponsors was just so lax. Anybody could become a sponsor. In fact, I believe there was one whistleblower by the name of Aaron that actually came forth with this information that MS-13 gang members were adopting these children. So it was anybody. It was a free-for-all for anybody to take these children in their hands. Unfortunately, that's the answer. So if they have no identification system, they were already going towards sponsors that had no criteria set, strict criteria, then unfortunately, I would have to agree that they are probably dead or in really dire, bad situations.
Now, we can get congressional hearings, but Congress can't do anything except grandstand. So where's the Justice Department on this? I want somebody to be held responsible. Now, I'm not ignorant. I know that the CIA is involved in the drug trade. I know that the CIA is involved in the trafficking trade. I know that it's really deeply embedded inside the government. So do you think the Trump administration has the appetite and the wherewithal to actually root out anyone who is really responsible, who is currently in power?
I definitely feel that him and his administration have the appetite to go for anybody who might have facilitated this crime. Now, again, it seems like it's going to be a lot more intricate, a lot more complicated than the public perceives. I feel that they will absolutely have to go towards the root cause of all of this evil and actually formalize prosecutions, as they investigate. But once again, I would like to see that this would actually get down to the root cause instead of just a quick Band-Aid solution.
Yeah.
But I will say, I'm sorry to follow that up. I will say that we've seen a lot more action in the first 100 days of his administration than we have in the past 4 years of corruption.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And you have to stop the bleeding at the border first and cut that off first. And now really try to find out where these children are. But, like Ryan Mata and I talked about yesterday here on the show, we know where like thousands of these children are right now. I mean, you're in Texas. There's multiple facilities that we featured here on the show, these former Walmart facilities where these children are being trafficked and shipped off to families around the country and being paid, no wellness checks whatsoever. So if Greg Abbott or these guys, they could swoop in right now and rescue these children, thousands of them. And that's deeply disturbing. I just can't let that hang out there. But at the Counter Trafficking Network, how can people support you and what is your mission?
Sure. Counter Trafficking Alliance, we pride ourselves on first being a watchdog. And one of our first 2-year studies was on the anti-trafficking market and what resources actually existed at the current time. Unfortunately, our sights were set on the National Human Trafficking Hotline because that's the front line of any anti-trafficking effort, especially for victims out there wanting to see themselves out of their situation. Unfortunately, what we found were we'll say artifacts in our research that point to the hotline not being a great resource for victims. So at Counter Trafficking Alliance, we pride ourselves in being an America First, Christ-based organization, and we actually empower existing organizations out there that are on the front lines, either aiding victims, rescuing victims, or rehabilitating them. And we help them with resources. And it can be something as tangible as feminine hygiene products or clothing or even food vouchers.
All right. Natalie Denise, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your mission and thank you for what you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Coming up here on the show,
we're going to talk about the GDP because the media is saying, hey, Trump tanked it. We told you so. Did you vote for this? Well, we're going to look at the actual numbers with economist Peter St. Onge. But before we do that, Clayton would like to tell you about our friends over at Lear Capital.
Yeah, because did you know when the cost of debt exceeds the cost of essential programs and services, it dangerously increases the burden on the federal government. Our national debt right now has eclipsed $36 trillion. And watching the debt clock in real time shows the relentless pace of our financial liabilities as they build second by second by second. I mean, make no mistake about it, the U.S. dollar is in decline. And you have all of these countries abandoning the U.S. dollar to settle transactions, moving towards a BRICS currency or otherwise. That is trouble. Right now, interest on that debt is now exceeding $1 trillion per year. Interest rates staying high. These payments are only going to get worse. Borrow more, print more. That's exactly what we're doing right now. Borrowing from China, printing more money. Either way, the dollar's purchasing power is collapsing. So here's the reality. While the government can print, borrow, figure out what the Fed is going to do with their recurring budget deficits and all of that, you can't. Your retirement, your savings, your pension, your 401k, your fixed income accounts do not get a bailout. You get screwed in this scenario. That's why more Americans are acquiring gold and silver. Gold hitting an all-time high. Silver about still not even near its all-time high, half of it. And that's why people are protecting their own money with precious minerals. So that's where our friends at Lear Capital can help you get set up in doing and start investing in precious minerals. If you go to LearRedacted.com, just go to the website and just reach out to them or call their 800 number. They can help you start investing in precious metals. I mean, we've been saying it for years here on the show. Just give them a call. You can have gold coins shipped right to your house. Silver, like I've got my little bag of right here of like some silver that they shipped right to our house. It's a little bright in here to see it, but this is like, silver coins right here in your silver bars, or you can have it stored off-site in a protected, guarded facility that's guarded 24/7. So if you don't want to keep it in your gun safe, you can do that as well. Call them today, 1-800-613-3557, or go to LearRedacted.com and tell them you take action right now. The dollar is not on strong footing. I mean, $36 trillion in debt doesn't make any sense. But anyway, we're big gold bugs around here and silver bugs. So check them out today, LearRedacted.com. All right.
Actually, wait till I tell you about what happened to the interest rate on federal debt. It's very interesting. So we're going to talk about that. The gross domestic product for the first quarter of 2025 dropped by 0.3%. And the media is saying this is the negative fallout from President Trump. See, they told you so. He was going to mess it all up, and he did. But when you drill into the details, there's some interesting things here that may not be the case. Almost every marker of GDP was up, except government consumption expenditures. Government spending, which was always up during the Biden administration. And in fact, this is why the Biden administration always took credit for a strong economy, is because it was government growth. We held their feet to the fire for it. Now take a look at the Trump administration's first quarter GDP, and it shows that all other measures are up, but government spending is down. Not that one. Can you go forward to the next one? Yes. So these are the numbers we're looking at. Economist Peter St. Onge joins us to break this down. So, Professor St. Onge, did Trump tank the economy, or just in the ways that he said he would?
The media was waiting for this, man. They were so happy to see that negative number. So this was a kind of a crazy GDP report, and it was actually a blockbuster report. It was off the charts fantastic, but it was a negative number. And the market actually took a minute to figure it out. So when the report first came out, mainstream media, they said negative, we're in a recession. Look, Trump has done it. Did you vote for this? And the Dow Jones actually dropped about 2,000 points just off the bat. And then it immediately started rebounding as the analysts on Wall Street figured out what was actually in this report. By the end of the day, the market was actually up on it. And so what happened is that the entire negative part of the print, yes, you had government shrinking, and that was the first time that it happened, of course, since Biden came into the office. But the big one was that the negative was because imports are being front run, right? So there was a 41% increase in imports. And these are companies trying to bring imports in before the tariffs hit. So that's cars, it's clothes, it's everything under the sun. Those subtracted something like 4.1% off of GDP. So when you import stuff, it's kind of weird, but it counts as negative GDP. The assumption is that it's going to increase the GDP in future. But anyway, it's not accurate for this purpose. It's kind of a statistical quirk. So now what's fun is that if you strip out that front running, then you actually had about 4.5% growth. Okay. And as you mentioned, government actually shrank, right? That's what was driving the whole thing during Biden. So if you ignore that, you're looking at close to 5% growth, which is extraordinary. Now, where did that come from? One huge number, which was investment. So Trump has been talking about all the money he's bringing into the country. A lot of it is from foreigners. So you've got $2 trillion coming in from Saudi and Dubai. They've already promised that because they want to get on Trump's good side. Apple is bringing $500 billion in. You've got Taiwan Semiconductor, biggest, most sophisticated semiconductor company in the world. They're doing $165 billion in Arizona. Altogether, Trump is talking $5 trillion in investment that have come in just since he took office. Now, to put that in perspective, in a normal year, the entire U.S. economy, 320 million people, largest economy in the world, the entire economy racks up $4 trillion. Okay, and Trump has brought in, he actually says the number is 8. A lot of it's not public yet. So he has between doubled and tripled the amount of investment coming in the country. Now, what does that mean? So the Taiwan project in Arizona, they're talking about 40,000 construction jobs, which are going to Americans, oddly enough. You multiply that by all of that investment, you could be talking at 500,000 or more jobs to build the stuff. That doesn't even get into all the people you're going to have to hire to run that and to produce products here in America. So I had been skeptical on the tariffs. I loved them as a negotiating tactic, but I kept saying, look, it's going to take years and years to reindustrialize. Takes, a year plus to stand up a factory. What we're seeing right now is there is such a flood of investment in the country. And they're doing it for 2 reasons. One of them is that they want to get on Trump's good side. So everybody in the whole world knows that the way that you make Trump happy is that you dump $1 trillion in the U.S. and you create 100,000 jobs. So that's one reason why they want to do it. The other reason, of course, is the tariffs themselves. So they are looking at, frankly, it's chaos. Trump is being chaotic on tariffs. He's up 25 with Mexico. He's down 25 with Canada. They're all over the place. And I think he's doing that on purpose. He wants to create uncertainty for these foreign companies so that just, eventually they just say, screw it, I'm going to produce in America. I'm going to get under that tariff umbrella. I'm never going to have to worry about tariffs again. So you put those two together and we are reindustrializing, I think, at a pace very few people imagined. And at this pace, we actually will start to produce significant amounts in this country. And the kicker is it'll be paid for by foreigners.
Well, that's one of the big pieces of this. Although the Trump administration last week announced, hey, these factories that are going to be brought to the United States will even cover the cost of building the factory, right? We will subsidize that piece of it. I thought that this GDP number was fascinating because isn't this what you get? When so much of the GDP is reliant on all these government jobs. You cut all of these government jobs, and you start to shift those jobs from the government to the private sector. You're going to see a shift in GDP, are you not?
You absolutely are. And what you're getting at is the quality of the GDP. So GDP includes a lot of things. Fundamentally, GDP just measures what was spent. If we build a bunch of bombs and then we give them to Ukraine and they blow up bridges, okay, fundamentally, we could have spent the money digging holes and filling them back in because it didn't actually create anything for us, right? Another big element of GDP that was popular under Joe Biden was mass migration. So if you are handing money to illegals and they're spending it on stuff, that shows up as GDP. Elon had made the point a couple months ago that if you fire everybody who works in the car industry right now, and you rehire them at the DMV to look out the window, and you pay them a higher salary to do that, which is, how it works. Government workers are very well paid. If you do that, you actually increase GDP. Now that's nuts, right? But that's how GDP is counted. So when most people are thinking of GDP, they think when GDP goes up, we get rich. When it goes down, we get poor. That's generally true, but there's a lot of funny numbers there. And right, one of them is government spending is counted as GDP no matter what it is spent on. Another is that illegal migrants are going to show up as GDP because the people whose job they took are getting welfare, which is GDP. They themselves are getting paid, which is GDP. So it looks like an increase, even though the country's getting poor. So exactly what's happening is that we are replacing that Biden era really junk GDP, government spending, mass migration, bombs to give to other countries. We're replacing that with what's turning out to be really the absolute gold standard, like the juiciest part of GDP, the dream part of GDP is investment, because investment is how you get rich. If you put $1 billion into a factory, that's because you're going to be running it. You're going to be creating jobs. The amount of prosperity that you create from that factory, I mean, it just keeps going on 20, 30 years.
Right. So something that you've been talking about for the last 4 years, because I watch you regularly, is every time Joe Biden took a victory lap on the GDP, we had to tamper that with knowledge that that's tax dollars, that's government jobs, that's government expansion. That's not the good kind of GDP that we want. Now, take a look at this. Interest on federal debt declined for the first time since Trump was president last. Now, we know that the interest on our debt is what we continue to kick the can down the road and put on our children. So this is also a campaign promise. Is it encouraging to see, even though it's ever so slight, a downward trend for the first time?
Yeah, when you've got something that's going parabolic like that, that's just going straight up to heaven, any kind of bend on the curve is very welcome. You know, federal spending, it's still going up because there's a lot of automatic kickers in there. So we're still working with Joe Biden's budget. Congress just basically kicked out the budget. Trump has not had a say in it yet. You know, we've got the interest rates are high now. So you've got a lot of old debt that was really cheap because they got it during COVID at 0%, and now it's expensive. There's all these reasons why the total amount of government spending is still going up. But Trump absolutely has been bending the curve on this. He's been doing everything he can with Doge. And I think one important fact, you know, before the election, I had a lot of discussions with my libertarian friends, and they were saying, Trump, same, you know, new boss, same as the old boss. He just wants to spend. Every single budget in Trump's first term, he tried to push through huge cuts. They were like $200-300 billion back when it was a much smaller budget. Every time Congress blocked him, Trump has consistently, ever since he entered politics, he's been trying to cut budget. There's a couple things I disagree with him on, like government military spending. But having said, on everything else, he has been much, much more prudent than anybody we've had since, you know, you could say Bill Clinton, but really that was Newt Gingrich. But it's been 30 years since we've had anybody with a shred of fiscal responsibility. And Trump is doing what he can. The problem, of course, is Congress. So Congress at this point, you know, the Senate seems interested in spending every last penny that Doge has saved. There's some good people in the House on the Republican side, but that is going to be a heck of a battle.
Yeah.
Peter St. Onge, we really appreciate it. Yeah, it's interesting to see the mainstream media headlines on this, you know, GDP down under Trump. It's like, actually, when you dive into the numbers.
Yeah, this is the kind of down we wanted. Shrinking government. Yeah, so we wanted that. We did that on purpose. We voted for it.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Great to see you as always.
It's great to be on, guys.
Peter.
Thanks.
All right. Have a great weekend. All right. Yeah, interesting. All right. Coming up here on the show, we're going to hang out and do our Rumble Premium in a little bit. We're going to do that. But I do want to mention, you know, specifically on income taxes. You know, one of the things that, Peter, we didn't talk about, but is on this income tax piece. And President Trump, I think, putting the pieces together on taxes. What exactly are they doing right now? I've co-authored a report on income taxes. What if President Trump slashes income taxes for Americans? You know, either it's under 200,000 or under 500,000. What specifically would this look like? So co-authored this report. I'd love for you guys to read it. It goes in deep on what exactly these Trump's proposed income tax elimination would actually look like. Go to redacted.inc/no tax. And I think, you know, slashing, can you imagine? I mean, because first of all, income taxes are illegal, right? It's leftover, of course, from World War I. We shouldn't even have income taxes in the first place. And IRS, we've had multiple IRS agents on the show who've said what a criminal operation it is, and that there's nothing in the Constitution that says we have to pay income taxes. Of course, this was a holdover. So President Trump, you know, could actually, I think, change things dramatically with this. Anyway, go check it out. I think it'd be fascinating. What would you guys think about having your income taxes totally?
I would love it. I spend a lot of time on tax planning.
Yes.
Yeah, and tax preparation.
I don't know, because then what would I have to? Would I have to just like send my money directly to Ukraine to buy weapons, or I wouldn't know what to do then? Like, direct? I don't know.
Yeah, send it to what was it? The circumcision classes in Ghana. Like, you just have to send it direct.
Yeah, how are we going to support that?
You could pick your favorite USAID charity and send it there if you want.
You definitely see what charities people actually supported.
Yeah, right?
Right.
We could choose for ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, do you support NPR? Great, then send all your money to NPR. Do you not support it? Anyway.
Yeah, there was a website that the Democrats launched this week to commemorate the 100 days of the Trump administration. And it's just a list of all the things that the Trump administration has cut, programs that they've cut. And I guess they want us to feel sad and shed tears over it. But when you actually look at the list of things that have been cut, I didn't feel sad about a single thing. Not one thing made me sad that the government is no longer spending on. So I don't know. You can find it for yourself. See if you want to play a violin over it.
I just can't imagine being like a Democrat and be like, honey, let's go out today. We're going to protest. Yeah, what are we protesting? What are we, women's rights, like anti-war? No, we're going to protest the cuts.
Yeah,
the
cuts to government spending.
Yeah, the cuts to government spending.
We love big government. We're like the world's smallest violin.
It's unbelievable. All right.
Well, the Trump administration is fighting with China over who started the COVID pandemic. And I don't understand it because both countries are talking all kinds of nonsense, fighting in public. Some things are true, some things are not. China apparently loves Democrats and Dr. Fauci. And says Trump did everything wrong. Trump is saying, no, it's China. I just want to invite you to figure this out for me because I have no grand narrative. I can see the holes in both arguments. And I'm wondering, why is this happening? And why now in the year 2025? So last week, the Trump administration launched this website blaming Wuhan for the COVID lab leak. And it reads very much like an I told you so from President Trump. In response, China published this white paper suggesting that the COVID pandemic could have come from the United States. Now, we've been over this. There is evidence that the COVID pandemic could have leaked from U.S. labs that were doing gain of function under Dr. Anthony Fauci. Now, the media says, yes, Fauci did gain of function in China. But Fauci also did gain of function in the United States. I can prove that to you. So what's with these weird political fighting in public over the pandemic? Now, remember this strange evidence we showed you 3 years ago that in March of 2020, researchers at Boston University published research showing that they had manipulated a spike protein from Omicron, which we didn't know about until 2021, and that the strain was 80% deadly in mice. Again, that was gain of function in Boston around a coronavirus virus. And it happened in early 2020, meaning they had been working on it throughout 2019. So there was gain of function that happened in the United States. And we also know there was an outbreak at Fort Detrick Lab. When people started to question that, recall this, the CDC said, anyone questioning that is QAnon. You can say the COVID came from a Chinese lab, that's acceptable, but you cannot say that COVID was being manipulated in the United States while there was a leak. That's QAnon. But there are biolabs in Maryland, and it turned out that Fort Detrick did have a lab leak. In August of 2019, we showed you this.
And it was, by the way, one of the most underreported aspects of this story, that the fact that it's not a conspiracy, it's a fact.
And it is an NIH lab, meaning it was a Fauci-run lab, and it was closed for 8 months in the summer of 2019, which the CDC did investigate. Now, just before this breach, researchers from this lab were working on research about coronavirus. Look at this paper published in March of 2019. The lab was closed after this research was done. Here's a graphic from that paper, again in 2019, showing how COVID could spill over to humans from animals. So, and then again, in that same summer, we're talking summer 2019, there was an outbreak of a respiratory virus in Virginia, about 60 miles from the lab. And here's a doctor at the time on ABC News saying, so weird, we're getting a respiratory virus in the middle of summer, an outbreak. I don't know what this is about. Watch.
Yeah. 60 miles.
Tonight, a deadly outbreak in Virginia. 2 deaths and dozens of residents sickened by a respiratory illness here at the Green Spring Retirement Community.
For a respiratory outbreak to occur in July would certainly not be as likely as for it to occur during the winter.
Okay, so did this outbreak end Or did it spread throughout the United States? Was it COVID? Or was it another respiratory virus in the middle of summer? Now, what China is saying is this is not QAnon. There is smoke here, and the United States never did a proper investigation. And that's true. China says that, but here's the thing. China's refuting that they had any kind of zoological outbreak. They're saying, no, wasn't possible. They say they tested over 80,000 species of wildlife. I don't know if that's true. What I'm saying is that both countries have suspicious things happening. Both are fighting. I don't believe either of them. And so I don't know what to believe because there's such strange things. They're saying they did actually find COVID in some frozen food products in 2020. In 2020, they're saying that the likelihood that COVID outbreak came from these different things, they're labeling this like direct zoonotic spillover, possible to likely. Introduction through an intermediate host, okay, likely to very likely. Through the food chain, possible. But through a lab leak, they're saying extremely unlikely. Now, here's where they start swinging at the United States, saying we need to check ourselves before we go pointing the finger. They're saying the U.S. had a slow and ineffective response during the early stage of the outbreak, and it was basically the worst of all countries. That it was totally our fault and we were the worst. And when we're doing it again, basically, they're saying that now that we have bird flu in 2024, that we didn't take responsibility. We didn't internationally, put everyone on notice. And then we cut off the WHO. And then they go straight for Trump. And the Republicans, they're saying that one American economist said that the U.S. President Trump at the time, and his team downplayed the crisis and ignored health guidelines and urged the U.S. government to examine all possible data and call out misinformation. Then they say that Trump goes on to downplay the pandemic and he left certain populations vulnerable, like ethnic minorities and the elderly, and that the U.S. didn't do the right thing until Democrats took office in 2021 when Republicans started to call about misinformation and vaccine misinformation and all of that. So China loved the Democratic response to the COVID pandemic. They think Trump did it shit and that the Democrats came in and did it right. And then they hit us for having less than 70% vaccination rate. They claim that the U.S. is scapegoating China for all of the pandemic failures. They're saying it's, they called it we called it the Chinese virus, that this has been negatively affecting Asian Americans, and that the United States didn't do its job. And then when there were reports of outbreaks inside the United States, that the United States hid that, which seems to be true. We do not get an answer about these gain-of-function projects in early 2020 or the outbreaks in 2019. We have never got real answers about that. So the report also says that the U.S. makes a scapegoat out of Dr. Fauci. Why does China love Dr. Fauci? Do they not know that he did gain-of-function here too? I mean, they put it in their report that the United States had. In fact, there's several things that are true in this report about outbreaks and gain of function that happened in 2020 and before. They must know Dr. Fauci greenlit those. So why do they think he's the hero? It just doesn't make sense. Now, this week, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard said they are investigating Fauci's role in funding gain of function in Wuhan. But he did it here too. It happened here too. So I'm just curious why we're pretending that didn't happen. So what do you make of this? All of the inconsistencies. China's not telling the full truth. The Trump administration's not telling the full truth. Why are they warring like this for the international narrative when both of them seem wrong? I don't understand it. Tell me what you think the purpose of this happening now and why it seems so critical to point the finger to the other. Because
it's control, to me anyway, it seems like it's control of the COVID narrative, and it's about public trust.
Yeah.
So at a time when China, and right now China's on real tenuous ground.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping, you actually have like university students now holding protests against Xi Jinping in China. You don't have that. You don't really have those types of things. So it's control over this public trust narrative. And so President Trump, as he, moves in towards 2026 midterm elections right now, trying to shore up that public trust to say that we've got your back. We can, it wasn't us, it was them.
Right.
But there's so many inconsistencies here with the biolabs. Also,
but it very well could have been us, and it wasn't Trump. It was Fauci, right?
Right. And but it's also the control of the biolab question, because these biolabs are still operating, by the way. Tulsi Gabbard just today, speaking with Megyn Kelly, talked about these biolabs, talked about Dr. Fauci going after him.
In China, though, she did not address the ones that are here.
Yes, and the ones we have in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So, again, it's sort of like, look over here, but not over here. Like, we don't want to tell you the real full story of this.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, I feel like the reason they won't release the files for Epstein and the JFK files is because once people realize they've been lying for all this time about all of this stuff, it opens people's minds to the fact that maybe they're lying about other things, and they can't have that. They can't have a bunch of awakened people, because we start questioning everything then, and then their propaganda doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then everything is like under a deep state narrative, right?
Right.
All of the things, it would confirm all the conspiracy nuts out there, people like us who are calling this out. Oh, Fort Detrick has this secret bioweapon, and then 60 miles away.
And it was closed for a lab leak that was working on COVID. That's kind of weird.
And all these old people get this mysterious respiratory virus.
And I feel strange, presenting this story to you, because I can't point out who's the bad guy. They're both lying. And so I can't figure out the narrative of, like, why give these half stories and these true, half narratives, these incomplete narratives. I can't make heads or tails of it. So let me know what you think. I mean, we don't have answers. We have more questions than anything else we continue to have from the pandemic.
All right. We're going to do our Rumble Premium Hangout now. We'll get there in a second. But first, we should point out that we have a daily newsletter. If you guys would like to subscribe to the daily newsletter, it's totally free. Just go to redacted.inc, put in your email address, and you will receive a welcome email from us. And then it publishes first thing in the morning. We publish it Monday through Thursday. So next Monday, you'll get it in your inbox. You just need to confirm in that welcome email that you get that you want to receive the newsletter. And it's very, very simple to do. And like I said, you can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes over your cup of coffee. Go to redacted.inc.
All right.
All right. So we're going to move over to Rumble Premium now. So again, if you are a Rumble Premium subscriber, great. You can join us right now. We're going to flip that switch inside of Rumble that makes it just for Rumble Premium. If you're not a Rumble Premium subscriber, you can get $10 off right now just go to rumble.com/premium, use the code redacted, help support free speech. This is really the only video free speech platform in the world, and they're doing an incredible job. So much so that France banned them. I think Brazil even is there in a legal battle with Brazil right now. So stand up for free speech. Go to rumble.com/premium, save $10 and support free speech. So thanks, guys. And all right, it's Rumble Premium time.
All right. For those of you who are not Rumble Premium members, we will see you here next week. We are here Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. So thanks for joining us. And now we're going to chat extemporaneously. That's right. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Click on it so I can get the chat room up here.
Okay.
ED20, and any questions you have, let's just hang out with the audience here and just talk for a little bit here. So ED209H says, do your own research